Welcome to the Thrive College podcast. We are officially kicking off season 3.
Let's go.
No, 4. I am so bad
four.
at math. So like that's a great way to start the podcast.
1,
but
2, 3, 4.
Season 4. It's just like not actually too many numbers to remember, but season 4 is all about finding your calling. So we know how it is. If you are graduating high school or early into your 20s, it can feel like there are just way too many paths. And the questions looming in this season are huge. Like, how do I know what God is calling me to do? Should I be dating this person? Am I called to this person? Am I not called to this person? Am I called to this certain career? Yeah. The questions are endless, and sometimes it seems like the advice is very limited. Yeah. So we have the opportunity at our Unleashed conference, which if you've not been to Unleashed, you need to go, to sit down with several artists and speakers and just explore this question about finding your calling. So today in the studio, we have BrvndonP.
Come on.
Hey,
give it up.
Let's go. Woo-hoo.
He's actually from Sacramento. So I was like, hey, where do you live now? And I don't know why I assumed that you had moved. You're like, that's still Sacramento.
Sacramento.
Which we love. Roseville is our area. We're just right outside of Sac.
Oh,
But
all the way down the street.
All the way down the street. Yeah, it's a really good street. And so you are a Grammy-nominated artist as well as producer. And you give us some of the artists that you've worked with, just some favorites rattling off the top.
Well, one of them's here tonight, KB.
That's right.
Andy, Lecrae. Who else? On the gospel Christian side, Ty Galbraith. Did a little work with Torrin Wells. Yeah, the list goes on. So that's just a couple.
It's a great group.
That's incredible. Mm-hmm. And I think there are so many people listening that are saying, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because you're sitting in a seat and you're doing some things that I want to do in my future. So really excited to hear you dive in a little bit to the story of how you found the passion to work in this realm of artistry and how you're working on your craft now and using it to the glory of God.
Yeah.
Also with us in the studio, we have Ty Amoris. Give it up for Ty.
Thank you.
Oh, very nice. We're going to have to get you on every episode to make that sound. And Ty, you've been with us several episodes.
Yeah.
I think you interviewed KB last year for us.
Yeah, I interviewed KB and then a few of the pastors around at Bayside.
So give us an idea of where you're interning in Thrive College, and then what is one thing you feel called to in this season?
I intern for worship at our Adventure campus and our Bayside Davis campus. And in this season, I feel like I'm incredibly that God has put on my heart is to not just serve and work, but also just to live out of his overflow versus just like doing it just to do it, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like that is something he's been pressing on my heart nonstop this season.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah.
That's a good place to be.
That is so good.
Yeah.
So kicking us off, Ty, what are the questions that you have for BrvndonP?
First question that came to mind, and I feel like this is, first, I think it's super cool as you as like a producer. I feel like in the realm of Christian music, I feel like producers don't get heard as much as like the artists. So I think that's super cool, first off. But this one can be, super summarized or not, but when did you realize that what you're doing now and what you did before, maybe that changed because of this, was God's will, not your will or your own desire, you know what I mean, your flesh?
I think, well, first off, producers nowadays have it way better than before. Yeah. Because the power of social media.
Totally.
Like utilizing the power of social media, now producers can come artists themselves. Yeah. Just want to start off by saying that. But I guess the answer to that question is whatever is easy for you. Yeah. Like whatever is done the easiest. It doesn't it don't have to take a lot of work to do. Yeah. And so with me, I just ended up playing drums from a young age. Nice. And then around like 15, 16, I ended up, I don't know where this idea came from in my head. I want to make a beat for my dad for Christmas. Don't judge me. And so ended up, my uncle was in the studio with me. He taught me how to make it. And I ended up just falling in love with it. Wow. I'm just like, every time. So he lived in Fresno, and every time we'll go to Fresno, I was like, yo, Unc, let me come over to the studio. Come over to the studio. So he got upset, not upset, but he got tired of me asking. So he was like, tell your dad to buy you a computer and a $99 Casio keyboard.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you the program.
That's
back in the day, these programs was like $400, $500, $600.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They're still pretty expensive.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, and then my dad bought a keyboard, and the rest was history. So I think the more you do something, the better you get at it, and it's whatever comes easiest for you.
Yeah.
Like whatever you like or passionate about, that's typically an area where you're going to view or find your passion or purpose or whatever in life. So
yeah. Totally. That's sweet.
That's so good.
And building off of that, I've heard a little bit of your story, but how is your faith? I feel like in the creative world, it's also a big thing right now is like, how do I serve God and speak through him in everything I do, but not also be so, I guess secular would be a word to use. So how has your faith transformed not only your work, but how you let Christ like live through what you do?
Yeah. So growing up in church, there was a lot of traditional religious things that I just grew up around. So I saw those as truths to my eyes. But then once I like got to know Christ for myself, it opened my eyes to the aspect of the relationship part of it.
Yeah.
So once I got an actual relationship, I was able to find out, okay, I can be myself. I don't have to deter away from how I actually am or my goofiness or whatever the case may be.
Totally.
To actually live out the life that God has for me. Does that make? Am I making sense right now?
No, that makes sense.
If I answered the question.
No, that makes sense. I feel like a lot of people kind of change almost a lot of things to almost fit
because
a
people
mold.
think like, oh, when I get saved, I gotta stop doing this, or I have to not do this, or I can't do that, or whatever the case may be. And it's just like, no, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's like it's not asking you to become a different person.
Totally.
You know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that makes sense.
I love that because I feel like there's a trend towards always like pushing you towards what's hard, like overcoming your weakness. And so what you're basically saying is build on your strength and to an extent also trust that those strengths, maybe you've misused those strengths for a while before you knew Christ. But there's the right application of those strengths. There's the right way to use those gifts and talents for his glory. I love that.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's good that you said that because like people do focus on the weakness part. I gotta get stronger than that area. It's just like, no, that's where you depend on God in that area.
Good.
Yeah.
Because in your weakness, he's made strong.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's when you start building up your strengths and the things that you are strong in or the gifts that God has given you, then that's when like you don't really focus on that. Because your perspective is your reality.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you focus on the negative or your weaknesses, that's all that is going to come out. And then he's going to be like, man, I'm always failing. Well, you always focusing on the negative.
Yeah, literally.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think especially as a Christian creative and artist or whatever you want to be called, I think there's like such a pressure to fit a standard and to fit like, especially with social media, you hear the backlash when you do something different. You know what I mean? The second you do something that isn't normal or maybe like controversial to some, but not actually an issue, it becomes like a major problem, or everyone starts like ridiculing, and it's like it's almost second nature to find an issue in whatever someone does because it's different.
That's why it's good to know yourself, number one, know God for yourself, number two, and have good people around you that can speak to an area that you need strength in. That like you know, because social media is crazy, and so like you know, I post something and then just all negative comments, and I had to call my mom, and I was like, Mom, she was like, delete it. Get off it for a week. Don't watch nothing.
That's a good mom.
But that was like, she was like, come over here. I cooked you some cookies or something like that. I don't know.
That's so
But it's
good.
having people that you can depend on. Even my brothers, like I had a situation where like I'm down and they just all pulled up.
Yeah.
Like I felt depressed, and it was like, no, we ain't gonna let you live in that. Like we're gonna pull up on you. And so we all share that camaraderie with each other to where, you know, we can call each other and not get judged by them. So it's all about like the people that you're around for sure. Yeah.
I wonder if you have any advice for someone who may be hearing from church people, hey, what you're doing, this artistic expression you have or whatever it may be, it's not right. Like you can't do that if you're a Christian. It sounds like that was a part of your journey.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So what do you do if you feel like, all right, this is something that it's a native talent for me. It comes naturally to me. I feel like I can use this for God's glory, but everyone's saying you got to stop doing this if you're going to be a good Christian.
Yeah.
What do you do?
So I actually, when I first started doing music, the church that I was in, pretty much said it was not of God.
Okay.
So I was a drummer at that church, and then like it was the whole situation where hip hop is of the devil and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So they heard the church drummer is producing hip hop music, and so I'm like, no, like it's Christian hip hop. Oh, that doesn't exist. So, I was younger at the time, but my parents saw, and they covered me in that moment.
Wow.
So we stopped going to that church.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, this is not a good place for our son to flourish and be taught and nourished and stuff like that. So my advice is if like, you know, this is God given, if what God is calling you to, you feel it and it's a burning passion in you, but there's some people around you that doesn't agree, you might have to shift to a different circle, a different atmosphere, or whatever, because that can literally suck the life out of what God is trying to birth.
Wow.
You know, so
That's good. That's strong. So you got to be careful about the community that you're surrounding yourself with, because if you're not careful, they can suck the life out of what God is trying to do and birth in you.
Community really is everything. Strong. Like you grow where like you're a product of your environment for sure. Yeah,
that kind of undoes the the idea of like the solo, like this genius who just is able to do it all on his own, and they're just so talented, they defy every odds. What you're saying is a big part of your journey has actually been the people that you've allowed to surround yourself with.
It's been a bit of both.
Okay.
So
tell
like
us
the majority of my career has been the solo aspect of me kind of like doing and finding out things on my own. Yeah. Because I was traveling so much and I was doing so much at a time. Like I was touring with Andy, so those were my brothers on the road. Yeah. Right. But when I came back home, it was just like I'm just at the house by myself. I'm making music by myself or whatever. It wasn't until I stopped traveling with Andy back in like 2018 to where I had to pretty much figure out community and how valuable it is. And so since then, like I learned how to be a friend, learned how to be a brother, and it's just like I kind of like this. You know what I mean? You know? So
and I feel like a lot of people don't realize like how to actually do that. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a skill that kind of gets taken for granted today because it's really easy to make like just friends off the internet or like, you know, just have like acquaintances, you know. But I think really deep-rooted community, you know, they always say like the 5 closest friends, like it shows you who you are, you know. So I think that's so cool that you found that and it helped shape who you are.
And it's crazy because it came out of in a way that I least expected it. So like it came from I was at a church. I ended up transitioning from one church to another. And the church that I transitioned to had this they're called FB1, Favored by One, but Favored by One is made up of different churches in Sacramento.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it's not just one church. And it was like, wait, Brandon P., you're at our church? Man, you should come out to our Bible study that we do every other Friday. I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, I ain't never did it. But I ended up going because they bothered me. That's good. And so I'm like, okay, this is cool. They didn't pressure me. They made me feel at home. I was like, all right, okay, cool. And so we ended up becoming really, really close. And then the church that I transitioned to, ended up, I was the MD there, the music director there. They ended up moving in another direction.
Yeah.
So I ended up like, oh, y'all don't need me no more? Dang. All right. But at the same time, I built relationship there to where it didn't, when I left that church, I didn't leave the community.
That's good.
I see.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
So in a way, I'm like, God, did you bring me to this church just for me to meet this community? So it's crazy how God just like sets stuff up. I don't know why or how he's doing it, but it's just like, hey, we're here.
That's very awesome.
That's so sick.
So cool. So as we're wrapping up, I just think about the person listening who's in this season of trying to find their calling. What is your best piece of advice for someone who just feels completely lost and confused and just says, I want to find the thing that I'm great at. I want to find the thing that God has put me on this earth to do. What's your best advice to them?
I would say, as a Christian, we don't pray for peace. We pray from it. So when you pray from peace, it allows you to, let's just say, all right, I feel like I'm supposed to go in this direction.
Yeah.
When you pray from peace, when you start moving in that direction, if the peace comes off, that's how you know, I'm not supposed to be, this is not it. And if you move, and if you shift and move over here, and you still feel peace, like you still, your spirit ain't troubled. And when we say feel peace, it's nothing deep. It's if you get irritated or not, like, you know, if you're annoyed, if you're just like, I'm tired all the time, whatever. That's kind of how that's my advice, is just like the peace of God is going to follow you wherever you go, unless, and when it comes off, that's how you know, I should probably reconsider going this direction. Wow. And that's what worked for me. That's what I still go by. It's just like, you know, is that. And also just, you know, whatever you like to do, passionate about, and are naturally gifted in. Yeah. It could be caring. It could be a care provider. It could be hospitality. It could be anything of those sorts, artistic, drawing, whatever, you know, that's where you probably should look into.
Love that. So follow the peace is the first piece of advice. Peace. Follow the peace, and then the second is to just honestly look at what you are great at. And sometimes I would also give the advice. Sometimes people are too humble, and they think that they're not great at anything. Go even talk to your mom, and you know, if your mom's been a cheerleader for you all your life, and just even if you feel like you're not great at anything, just say, hey, tell me what I was great at when I was 5 years old. And what I was interested in. You know, your story came from being a kid, wanting to give a gift to his dad, and then you stumbled on a passion that you had. So
and don't over spiritualize it. Like we are spiritual beings, but like what I mean by don't over spiritualize it, it's just like it's really simple at the base of it. You know, and people are like, oh, what is my calling? God, it's just like, I gave it to you already. You should already know. Okay, let me stop.
No, that's so good. Sometimes I talk to people and they're like, I'm not passionate about anything. I'm not great at anything. And I'll be like, you are literally the best person to just sit down and have a conversation with. And that, like, the fact that you think that's not a gift is because that comes so naturally to you. For other people, it's hard to sit down and just ask questions and have a conversation. So don't sell yourself short. Don't over spiritualize it, but look for something that comes naturally to you and that you maybe can be great at.
And I think people just forget to kind of look, point blank period. It's like we just ask and ask and ask. But it's like God has like placed it in front of us so many times.
Absolutely.
That's so good.
Absolutely.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Tell us where we can find you. If we want to follow your music and your artistry, where can we find you?
Everywhere. All social media is I am BrvndonP with a V in it. So that's AMBRVNDONP. Some people get confused, but it's with a V. I am BrvndonP on all social media, and thank you for having me.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Let's go.